Hello everyone, my name is Alejandra Requena, and for this presentation I chose the book Samba, The Making of Brazilian Carnival by Alma Guillermoprieto. Hope you'll enjoy this presentation. Starting with some information on the author, Guillermoprieto was born in Mexico City in 1949, where she lived there until her teens. Then she moved to New York City with her mother, and while in New York City she studied modern dance until 1969, when she was recommended for a job teaching at the Cuban National Schools of the Arts in Havana. Her career as a professional dancer lasted from 1962 to 1973. In 1978, she started her journalism career for The Guardian, where she covered the Nicaraguan Revolution. In 1981, she moved to the Washington Post, where she supported the coverage of the story of the El Mozote, which was a massacre that happened in El Salvador. When the story broke simultaneously in the Post and the Times in 1982, it was dismissed as propaganda by the Reagan administration. However, later on, the details of the massacre, as reported by Guillermoprieto and her colleague, were verified and generated widespread repercussions. Guillermoprieto continued her career as a journalist until 1987, when she left to write her first book, Samba, which is the book that I will be talking about today, which was published in 1990. This book was based on her experience studying at a Samba school in Rio de Janeiro for journalistic purposes. During the 1990s, she worked as a freelance writer, contributing to various articles on Latin American culture and politics for The New Yorker and the New York Review of Books. Some of the topics she covered were the Colombian Civil War, the aftermath of the Dirty War in Argentina, and an article on Pablo Escobar. In 2004, Guillermoprieto published Dancing with Cuba, which was based on her time living in Cuba in her early 20s. It is no doubt that Guillermoprieto can be seen as a successful author and journalist, and to prove this, she has won multiple awards and fellowships throughout her career. As previously mentioned, Samba, The Making of Brazilian Carnival, is based on the experiences of Guillermoprieto as she studied Samba in Rio de Janeiro. For 1 year, the author explored the village of Mangueira to learn firsthand the Samba lifestyle. At first, Guillermoprieto experienced pushback from the locals, finding cold and harsh individuals that were not willing to let her learn about their lifestyle. However, once she gained their trust, she was able to learn about how Samba started, the beliefs that drive Samba, and the process behind Carnival. Guillermoprieto begins the book by sharing some of her initial cultural shock experiences when she arrived to Brazil. The author describes how, along with her new apartment, came a maid. Her name was Nieta, and Nieta taught her about the differences in social classes, roles, and racism, as well as shared general culture that included music and soap operas. Eventually, Guillermoprieto let her go as she felt that Nieta was getting overly comfortable and stealing from her. Yet, I do think that Nieta played a key role in Guillermoprieto's introduction to Brazilian culture, as she provided her with the perspective of a local. Additionally, Nieta shared some of her knowledge on Samba and the favelas. The author's first experience of Carnival changed her thoughts of the event being vulgar and loud, and instead pushed her to want to learn more about this lifestyle. She was lucky enough to have met Nilsemar in Mangueira, who helped her convince Carlos Doria, who was the president of the Samba School of Mangueira, to let her explore this topic. He still gave her some pushback, but either way, unfortunately, Doria was assassinated and his murder was never solved. Guillermoprieto includes some history on Samba in her book. Samba dates back to the mid-19th century, when someone came up with the idea of beating a large drum while a crowd followed them around the neighborhood to celebrate the week before Lent. This practice evolved during Dom Pedro's reign as elite European elegant celebrations. These societies would parade through the main streets dressed in costumes, When the law that abolished slavery was signed, the newly freed blacks became an irritation for the elite during their celebrations. Carnival became a battle between both races, where the elites wanted a civilized celebration and the newly freed slaves wanted to Africanize theirs and include more of some flavor and louder music. At first, the whites attempted to persecute the blacks for their celebrations in Samba. However, after a while, they could not resist feeling attracted to this music, and by 1923, Samba was playing on the radio stations and Carnival had been legitimized. Despite this book being titled Samba, the author makes a greater emphasis on the people who take part in Carnival. For instance, Guillermoprieto highlights the organized crime that is established in the favelas. These people are called malandros or malandras. To some, being a malandro is a synonym of strength and someone who will not be stepped on, as it is explained in the book. Guillermoprieto was able to learn herself how the interaction between malandros and the community is different from that of popular belief. However, malandros do engage in violent acts and drug trafficking that pose risks to the community. After analyzing the book, I was able to see how the author highlights social struggles such as crime, poverty, and racism that people in Brazilian favelas experience, and how it can be inferred that the cultural phenomenon that is Carnival allows them to escape this part of their lives as they prepare for the celebration. The misery, drug culture, fatalism, lawlessness, and male dominance are masked by the joy of the preparations for the few happy days of the year during the Carnival, which the author followed through until the last minute before the climax. The parade that she could only see briefly from afar but not participate in due to what appears to be a nervous breakdown. I enjoyed reading Alma Guillermoprieto's book. It was a very interesting book, and it is interesting to read about the perspective of a foreign journalist on Brazilian culture. Her experiences allowed her to provide a good description of the life of the lowest Brazilian class in a Rio favela. However, I do believe that there are some improvements that could be made to this book. For instance, the book is titled Samba, but it felt somewhat vague in terms of the music's history, and the author doesn't really add much information on the relationship between the music and religion, even though there is a clear one. Also, she doesn't talk much about the popularity of samba outside of the favelas, which is kind of alluding to samba not being a music genre recognized across the world, even though it is. Still, this is a great book with lots of detail and very in-depth description of Brazilian culture. Hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.